In the 1960s, a particular genre of cinema began to take shape known as the road movie. Sweeping cinematic shots of open roads, western landscapes dotted with diners and billboards, signs of the ever-expanding reach of American capitalism. Outlaw bikers on the run, windswept hair in the law and hot pursuit. Such images became synonymous with a style of American cinema that championed movement while dealing primarily in cultural critique. It is a genre that's deeply rooted in more traditional conventions like the Western. Sherry Roberts, in her essay Western Meets Eastwood, points out the transference of the Western to the road movie by saying that the frontier becomes the road, the horse becomes the car, and the hero becomes a desire. These elements of the road movie can be traced back to the 1940s in films like Stagecoach and The Grapes of Wrath. But it wasn't until the 1960s with films like Easy Rider and Bonnie and Clyde that critics began to identify them as a genre in their own right. Often identified as a uniquely American genre, the road film is not solely possessed by Hollywood. In the introduction to the road movie book, A Comprehensive Study of the Genre, Stephen Cohan and Ina Ray Hark point out that from the late 1970s to the early 1990s, the most interesting road films were being made outside mainstream Hollywood. They write that Germany's Wim Wenders, who would name his production company Road Movies, pondered the genre's essential Americanness through European eyes. I'd like to take a look at Wenders' 1984 film Paris, Texas, a collaboration with American playwright and actor Sam Shepard, and explore how it employs key conventions of the road film, like landscape and movement, but also how it interrogates one of the most common practices of the genre, the centrality of the male experience. The Western has been referred to as the grandfather of the road movie, and the opening shots of Paris, Texas look more like a Western than a road movie. Indeed, the first 15 minutes or so of the film are shot completely in the absence of roads. Even as the central character Travis, played by Harry Dean Stanton, approaches the first signs of civilization in search of water, a dilapidated and eerily empty bar, the structure seems to appear out of the desert itself, the camera situated in such a way as to obscure any road leading to or away from the saloon. In an interview, Wenders talks about the initial screenwriting process with Sam Shepard and how they began with the idea of Travis and a setting, the American West. Wenders says that the setting was chosen between them for different reasons, but for him, it was legendary Western film director John Ford. Wenders seems to acknowledge the intersection of these two genres quite literally in this scene, where the movie shifts from its Western conventions to sit firmly in the road movie genre. Walt, Travis's brother, comes to find Travis after learning of his whereabouts. When Walt finds him, Travis crosses his brother's path to continue through the wilderness, hardly acknowledging the road, or the car, or even the sound of his own name. He does, of course, eventually get in the car with his brother, and as the two set off back to Los Angeles, back to the life he once knew and the son he'd left behind years ago, the film begins to resemble the road movies that Wenders is known for. David Lederman, in his book Driving Visions, Exploring the Road Movie, identifies two major narrative pretexts common in road movies. The quest road movie, which emphasizes roaming itself, usually in terms of some discovery, and the outlaw road movie, which emphasizes a more desperate fugitive flight from the scene of a crime or pursuit of the law. I'd say that Paris, Texas falls firmly into the former category, but there are also elements of the outlaw road movie to be found. As a quest road movie, the primary quest in Paris, Texas is hinted at in the title of the film itself, its meaning revealed in the scene where Travis speaks for the first time, identifying that Paris, Texas was the place of his conception.
I remember now.
What?
Why about that land?
Oh, why?
Well, Mama once told me that that's where she and Daddy first made love.
Oh, in Paris, Texas?
Yeah,
She told you that?
yeah. So I figured that that's where I began. I mean, me, Travis Clay Henderson. They named me that. I started out there.
Paris, Texas.
Yeah.
As the film plays out, there are other quest narratives that take shape, like when Travis is reunited with his son Hunter and relearning what it means to be a father, what Mark Luchette refers to as Travis's extended second childhood. And of course, the central quest towards the end of the film as the two set out on the road again to find Jane. This narrative structure sets Paris, Texas apart from most road movies, as Travis's journey is moving backwards at the same time as it moves forward. His quest is reunification of the family unit, while at the same time reckoning with his past and attempting to return to his origins. This journey doesn't come into full view until the end of the film in a scene that Wenders designed as a one-act play. It's one of the most memorable scenes in the film, not least of which for its staging. The two principal characters separated by one-way glass in a peep show where Jane is working. The male gaze here on full display. Over the course of this scene, we learn the story of Travis and Jane's past, the dissolution of their marriage, Travis's violent and controlling behavior, and the true catalyst for his initial departure. It is here we find elements of the outlaw road movie, but instead of fleeing from the scene of some external threat, like the law or a crime, Travis is fleeing from himself and the failings of his masculinity. Exploration of masculinity is common in the road movie. Lederman writes that the genre maintains a traditional sexist hierarchy that privileges the white heterosexual male, relegating women characters to passive passengers and or erotic distractions. There are countless examples in road movies of men situated in the figurative and literal driver's seat. Even in 1991, as Thelma and Louise upended gender roles within the genre, there was criticism that it was merely an exploitive exercise of women taking on the roles coded as masculine in a masculine genre. What makes Paris, Texas stand out, I believe, is the distinct European aesthetic that Wenders injects into an otherwise overwhelmingly quintessentially American kind of movie. Stan Jones points out that one of the key distinctions in Wenders' work is his belief that the camera functions always in two directions, showing its viewing subjects just as much as its viewed objects. As Travis reckons with his past failures and what it means to be a man, a father, and a husband, the viewer is invited to take the same journey, to evaluate their own failings, to return to their own origins and attempt to move forward as a better version of themselves. The journey Paris, Texas takes towards a better future resembles less the direct trajectory of interstate highways, of frontier expansion and proliferation of American capitalism, than it does the complex weaving of synapse in the human mind.